Know ye that at the right hand of the Indies is an island named California, very close to that part of the terrestrial paradise inhabited only by women. We are like Amazons, strong of body, with passionate hearts and great virtues. Our weapons are made of gold, and we have many ships which we sail to far-off places. And the man we capture, we make our slaves.
Here, where we live, is Hutash. All mankind lives in the sphere of Hutash. The sphere of Hutash is everything that contains the human race. And for the Indians, the sphere of Hutash is the land.
The Indians were rounded up, trained for a specific job in the mission compound or in the fields, and taught the observances of the Catholic Church.
When we showed the Indian women a beautiful painting of the most blessed Mary, they became so taken with it they could not tear themselves away. The very sight touched me to the heart, and I thought how much more homage they would pay to the great Queen when, in the light of faith, they come to know how exalted she really is.
Eventually, all of the coastal Indians were uprooted and relocated on mission land. And as their indigenous cultures ceased to exist, they became a faceless and demoralized people. It took 13 years for the seeds of the Mexican Revolution to bear fruit in far-off California. The missions secularized and their lands redistributed. The abandoned buildings soon fell into ruin, and the mission Indians became servants to the lords of the new era, the recipients of Mexican land grants, owners of the great rancho.
It seems to me that there never was a more peaceful or happy people on the face of the earth than the Spanish, Mexican, and Indian population of Alta California before the American conquest. We were the pioneers of the Pacific coast.
Mexico used to own all of this land. We named this city. I mean, Los Angeles is not Norwegian or Scandinavian. It's Mexican. It's not Spanish. It's Mexican. It's a mixture of Indian and Spanish. We came up with it, and it's a Mexican. We used to own this, but the only thing we own now is just the names on the streets. Alvarado, Olvera. It just means that I got roots here. It means that I do belong here, that I have a right to exist here along with every other nationality that's productive here.
The rich mission lands ultimately passed into the hands of political and military officials, their families and friends. They built substantial homes on their lands and entertained in a continuous series of rodeos and fandangos. They became a California aristocracy with names like Castro, Pico, Sepulveda, and Vallejo, and enjoyed a simple life of rustic elegance in the California sun.
In 1840, when a man moved out west, as soon as he was fairly well settled, he wanted to move on again. So it was with me. I'd been teaching school in Missouri for only 2 years when I came across a Frenchman named Roubidou, who said he'd been to California. His description was in the superlative degree favorable. He described it as a land of perennial spring and boundless fertility, with countless wild horses and cattle and oranges. The Spanish-speaking inhabitants, he said, were the most hospitable people in the world. The Indians friendly, and no place could be more satisfactory on the score of health.
We heard the warnings of the Mormon prophets at the Great Salt Lake. They told us that if we went on, we would lose our cattle and perish on the desert. Or if we reached the Sierra Mountains, we would be snowed in and perish there. We heard it. We coolly talked it over. And yet so perverse were we that we continued our journey anyway. 1 solitary wagon, 3 yoke of oxen, 2 men, 1 woman, a young child, and only as much provision as might last till we could scale the Great Sierra.
When the world rushed in, California had no currency, no laws, no tax, no government. On his own initiative, the United States military governor called for a convention to determine what to do. 48 delegates arrived in Monterey, 3 foreigners, 7 Californios, and 38 Americans. Most shared a common interest, gold mining. They represented a fair cross-section of California at the time. Before the government in Washington was aware of it, this unlikely group had written a constitution and applied for admission to the Union, bypassing all normal procedures. Congress complained bitterly of their impudence, the president of their unprecedented and highly irregular behavior. Nevertheless, within the year, California became the 31st state, on her own terms, with her own constitution, at her own initiative. Gold had made California irresistible to the Union. It also had a great impact on the country's economy. Suddenly, the international spotlight was on the far west. No longer were the Californians isolated from the world. Instead, they began to lead it.
We were talking earlier about some of the heritage of California and the sort of the pioneer characteristics that are present in the state. And I think it's true that as people came west over time, they came to California expecting a new life, a new environment, and new ways of doing things. And I think California continues to be at the forefront as really the cutting edge in so many of these areas with the kind of optimism and can-do spirit that is certainly still present here.
Southwest 12, 1 to 3 feet, shape, glassy conditions. This is Jim at Bad Hat Beach, where this morning underneath blue sunny skies, we've got 2 to 3 foot with poor shade. For Hank